Welcome to the Wizards of Amazon podcast, where we cover all things private label. My name is Carlos Alvarez, and I'll be your host for the show. Today, we have our first time repeat guest on the show, Chris McCabe. Chris, what's up?
I'm honored. Thank you.
Yeah, I am honored too to get so much of your time. For those of you that can hear perhaps a dog or my son or my daughter in the background, I am recently kicked out of my office, even though I was doing social distancing as city ordinances have become stricter. Probably for good reason, and now I've set up this quick home office here, so bear with me if the audio sounds a little different, but the content is going to be amazing as ever. Chris, crazy times, man.
Yeah. There's a lot of attention on what we're talking about today, the price gouging, the Amazon fair pricing policy, but the price gouging suspensions. Lots of, I think your groups kicked that topic around quite a bit, and it's been a hot discussion on my Facebook group too. And what Amazon's doing with those is up for grabs. A lot of people are trying to understand what their strategy is, who they're shooting at. Are there false positives? It seems to be unfolding as we speak and just changing moment to moment. So
yeah, we're recording this on March 26th at 5:09 p.m. just because it seems like I have to say 5:09 p.m. because at 9 p.m. something we're saying could be as fast as everything's moving, something
right.
Can change.
Yeah, and your strategy has to change as new information comes out because, the article I wrote on my website published today, the 26th, but some of it was information that I haven't seen mentioned anywhere else. I had to go into the concept, for example, of secondary reviews. Some people we got reinstated because of the nature of the offense, because Amazon's under such scrutiny to be tough on people for this.
Absolutely. Let's walk it back though.
Okay.
For people that don't understand price gouging, I thought it was a pretty common sense thing.
Yeah.
I've heard it called price gouging, scalping by people.
Profiteering.
Yes, everything.
Yes.
So some people have come up to me and they said, I don't understand. I thought we were supposed to buy low and sell high. I got these things. Right. So walk me back from that, from someone that doesn't get it. What is price gouging? What products are is Amazon really focusing on right now, and why is it a problem?
Household staples. Traditionally, the term used was household staples, and in times of shortage or crisis, the best prior example I can use is the hurricane season, when people were busted last year, the year before, for selling bottled water too high. Anything that you'd need, when you're battening down the hatches, and there's, you're in Florida, you know what hurricanes are.
Oh yeah.
South Florida especially. So anything where you can't raise prices artificially simply because people are more desperate for product for survival. And there are state laws around this. All laws differ from one state to the next. But the bottom line is Amazon had to create one policy that would apply to everybody, no matter what state they're in. And of course, Amazon being Amazon, it has to be a stringent and tough policy, which is if you violate this and you do it, whether it's deliberately or accidentally, you're looking at bare minimum having listings removed and deleted. And of course, the highest penalty is an account suspension, where you have to appeal with a plan of action. So
in some cases, some of these sellers are telling me not only is Amazon threatening to sell the account, suspend the account, outright suspending the account, but they're also being reached out to on the buyer seller message board and via email, mail delivery with like attorney general, government. So this could technically be a lot more severe than just your account being suspended.
Exactly. And I think that's probably going to have to be my next article on this topic, because that's a whole sidebar that I didn't want to focus on today when I wrote a piece. But I don't have a full list of all the states: California, Washington, New York, Massachusetts, where I am. Several state attorneys general have written to Amazon already and complained about price gouging. And Amazon's very, very motivated to coordinate efforts with those states to report sellers. Now, I don't want to freak everyone out saying if you've been warned for price gouging on Amazon, you're definitely going to wind up on some list sent to your state attorney general. But keep in mind that Amazon has a past precedent of cooperating in these types of investigations. The attorneys general in all these states, and all 50 states, I think, are fairly motivated to show that they're taking this seriously and taking action on it. And then, of course, Amazon, for public perception, for friendly government relations for a lot of reasons with the media. For every reason publicly, they need to show that they're being harsh and aggressive with this.
And Chris, you were on the podcast before where you actually introduced yourself. You have extensive experience having worked in seller performance in Amazon, and you have a ton of experience outside of Amazon helping sellers, get their accounts back and
Right.
basically combat Amazon, like to even the playing field some, and they have a
Yeah.
fair chance of getting their account back. Can you, with that experience, how does somebody who's determining this, like what is, there's a demand, so I'm raising the price, like where is that line drawn, and who's determining what is gouging and what is just making bigger profits?
Yeah, I mean, you have to check state and local laws. This is the biggest flaw I've seen in seller composed plans of action when they show me their appeals. And that these are people who haven't necessarily hired me to jump in on it, but they're showing me for a reaction and trying to get some advice. So they wrote it, but they don't really demonstrate to Amazon that they understand what the local laws are. Maybe it's 15% markup, maybe it's 10%. You have to start by looking at least the state you're in and understanding, of course, if you're an Amazon seller, you're selling in all 50 states essentially, right? Your inventory is going everywhere.
Sure.
But you have to show in the plan of action some understanding of what's considered an artificially high price for those particular items. It's not just, well, let's look at what other sellers are selling it for. This is one problem people who have with automated repricing software, right? They just let it go. They wind it up and let it go. Well, of course, as demand goes higher and supply goes lower, the price is going to go up. You have to show in a plan of action when you're appealing a suspension that you're monitoring that. You're not just leaving it, letting nature take its course. You've got manual control over it.
So it would be important for you. It's important to acknowledge that you come clean and say, yes, this is how you raise the price. It was your repricer, but you're not blaming the repricer. It's your responsibility and what you're going to do to not allow that to happen again.
For not monitoring it. There's a variety of ways of saying it in your root causes section, but the bottom line is you're not just saying, well, we got suspended because we violated the fair pricing policy. They already know that. That's the cause. That's not a root cause. I believe if investigators don't see that you've clearly identified the root causes for this, since they're already prepared to be very harsh and aggressive on these suspensions, they're not going to read the rest of the appeal. And the problem becomes, they were already backlogged and delayed. We already had tons of complaints that seller performance was never reviewing appeals, never responding to anybody. Imagine the backlog now. So you don't want to waste an opportunity by sending like a 50% of the way there POA. If your plan of action's like sort of there, sort of not, kind of watered down, some of it's okay, some of it's not, you're looking at 9, 10, 11 days before they respond to you again, unless you come back, understanding how the escalation process works and you've got a great POA.
When you worked in seller performance, did you ever experience such a tsunami of things coming in like this at one time?
Yeah, I mean, there was about 10 years ago, there was a huge snowstorm in the UK, and Amazon understood that the UK is not really built for snowstorms, so we weren't necessarily taking every account down for late shipment or for canceled orders. I mean, they sort of relaxed enforcement on the metrics. It's kind of it's a good news, bad news situation in terms of performance metrics. They're not necessarily heavy-handed there, but when it comes to the price enforcement and the policy, the fair pricing policy enforcement, they take that extremely seriously, and they have to demonstrate to everyone else in the company, everyone else at least in the United States, that they, that they're willing to suspend this many sellers, which I think is, 4,900 sellers have been suspended for this now.
That's huge.
And most of the calls I've had, most of the emails I've read demonstrated that sellers didn't really either learn from past mistakes or they didn't understand how risky their strategy was when it came from profiting from a situation like this, which you and I know this could go on for 6 more weeks, 8 more weeks.
Absolutely.
So people say 6 more months. Hopefully it's more like 2 months.
Right.
But we really don't know. And Amazon doesn't know. And politicians, I mean, it's their elected officials, it's their job to crack down on Amazon for stuff like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Two things. One is I'm hearing from my group a lot of, and some of these people are friends and they're clients of mine. So they've either had the trust or I'm seeing it in their account to show me. So I can verify that what they're saying is true, that they took advantage of the fact that there was a demand and they added a listing that they were ungated to list.
Yep.
But since they hadn't sold it previously, I'm assuming, and they were just matching price or going lower, there truly wasn't no gouging. They just had a margin. They were suspended or threatened suspension for gouging, but they truly were not. And the second one is there a severity scale on gouging that someone from seller performance might look at?
I'm not aware of a severity scale like most people would consider. Well, these are just criminals out to rip people off during a crisis. They're the ones who are going to get suspended. I mean, that's not typically how it works. It's kind of a black and white. You're either doing it or you're not. They suspend anyone who's doing it, especially people who have been warned previously, and then they catch you again and they send you another warning. Well, that's more likely to result in a suspension. Fortunately, this time there were some people who just lost some listings where they deleted a bunch of listings and they maybe sent a notification, hey, in the next 24 hours, look at all your prices. And that's the only thing they've heard in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So those people didn't go straight to the suspension pipeline. But in the article I published today, I kind of broke out the different groups. Who are the people that they believe need to be taken down immediately? So those are the first wave, are the people we got to get these guys suspended right away. The second wave, or the second group.
What's determining that?
Yeah, the second wave or the second group would be, well, I mean, it's algorithmic, of course, the nature of the offense, but some people are just getting the call from account health services saying you have 72 hours to do a plan of action. Both groups have to do a POA. The need for a plan of action is the same for both. It's just that one version, one group of sellers is still actively selling and has a chance to delete listings or remove pricing, and the other group's already been suspended, but the process is similar. The third group, of course, being people who had warnings and listing deletions but haven't lost their account, and it doesn't look like they're going to lose it in 72 hours if they don't have a good plan of action. So I address all three groups in the article. In terms of severity, if most or all of your listings are price gouging, then yeah, you're going to be like an automated suspension.
That makes a ton of sense. Thank you. I'm wondering if, let's just use a mask because that's what's spoken about a lot. So somebody gets a hold of one of these, I guess, N95 masks, if I'm saying that right. And they, by severity, I mean, some people sold it for $50. Some people sold it for $200. I've heard of some people selling it for $900 in the hype. When someone on seller performance is looking at that, even with a super well-crafted POA, is there a chance at the 500 and 900 level that someone even gets it back? Or does the person looking at this say, look, this is just way out of bounds here. Like, you really took advantage of the situation.
They're supposed to go case by case. I mean, some of the outrageous prices were because of repricers that no one was watching. And that's not necessarily deliberate. In Amazon land, usually, do they care if it's intentional or not? Usually not. But you would hope that somebody who's slightly above the threshold versus $200 for a bottle of hand sanitizer, you would hope they would look at that and understand it. There's a certain amount of automation that goes into who gets flagged, but at some point before there's a suspension, there's a human being looking at it and deciding to suspend the account.
And seller performance can see if you have a repricer connected to your account, because you would have had to have set that up through your account, no?
Right. So there's not only that, but they can probably tell just by looking at your pricing and patterns if you're doing it manually or not. Either way, your plan of action, you have to say we were doing this manually or we were doing it with automation, but we weren't doing the right thing. Now, what you mentioned a moment ago in terms of false positives, yeah, I'm starting to see, this is one of the updates from today and yesterday. I'm starting to see a lot more false positive warnings where listings are taken down and no one can really tell why. There are some people who sell like industrial dust masks who had their listings removed, which aren't medical masks, and they're not supposed to be used that way. So obviously that's maybe an engineer put together a tool for grabbing, it's just an algorithm, a script they put together for grab the word masks. And they didn't differentiate between medical masks and industrial, cleaning or dust masks, which maybe they'll change that logic and they'll improve that and fix it. in future iterations, but they were desperate to get something done quickly. And let's face it, Amazon in times like this, sometimes they carpet bomb just to make sure they get it all. You know what I mean?
Napalm.
Yeah. Just to make sure that they don't leave anyone behind who's committing gross violations, because what are they afraid of other than bad buyer experience? We all know they're afraid of tons of complaining and anger from buyers. They're also afraid of the media perception of, by the way, we left some outrageous use cases live listing on the site. Why weren't they catching those? An interesting point with the letter from the attorneys general that I think there was a Bloomberg article I read about that yesterday. They're asking Amazon to be more proactive, not just to wait until somebody complains and then take the seller down, then take the listing down. They're trying to push Amazon to write scripts that are more proactively removing these things before people see them.
Makes sense. What I think we covered like what gouging is, so they're really, there's no ambiguity there. Now, if somebody has run afoul of gouging and they have a seller account, seller accounts are obviously important to have if you want to succeed on Amazon, and they've been suspended.
Yeah.
They need help. They need help now. I mean, it's a very confusing time, and they reach out to you, which I would encourage them to reach out to you. What does that look like?
In terms of having us take over and do it, or just advice? And I mean, I have a 1 hour appointment on my calendar. Yeah, I mean, some people decide from the beginning they want to handle it themselves. I have a 1 hour consult calendar for people that have a plan of action to present. And because of that 1 hour initial assessment that we do, that's why I've seen so many POAs on this topic in particular. So I'm spending a lot of hours per day just reading other plans that other people have put together and critiquing them.
And are you seeing any right now that afterwards they're like, look, I want to hire you on this, and you're like, look, I'm not touching this. This is just way aside.
Yeah, I mean, any given day we have dozens of people contacting us about this, but usually it works out in terms of some of us. I mean, you know, I don't outsource work overseas. We don't have VAs or anything. I've only got former Amazonians working on client-facing work. So there is a limit and a capacity. We can't take on dozens and dozens per day, but we have managed the flow pretty easily because a lot of the concepts are repeating themselves and they're similar. And a lot of the sellers making mistakes on POAs are making the same types of mistakes that can be corrected. So it's really just a question of what's your preference? Do you need us to take this on for you? Some people need us to take over because they're not getting any responses, which is a different kind of problem. It might be a good POA and the lack of response on Amazon's side. Other sellers are contacting account health services and they're getting what I'm sure your group and others have, you know, reported mixed information, inconsistent assessments from account health services. It totally depends on who you get. It's the same as calling seller support, right? You'll get 7 different answers when you call 7 times. And my concern, which again, I addressed in the article I published, my concern is that account health service reps aren't really adequately trained on this topic. I've been sitting in on some calls with clients who are on with them discussing a POA, and there's just a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of bad information that I really don't think seller performance investigators would take seriously, that account health reps are advising that you put in your plan. So they're kind of setting you up for failure out of their own ignorance and their own lack of training on this topic. So don't assume that account health services has the golden key and their assessment of your material is perfect. And as long as you sort of copy and paste what they tell you, it's going to sail you through the system, because that doesn't reflect our experience with our clients. Take it with a grain of salt and do your own critical thinking around the information you get from them. If you have to call back and run it by somebody else to differentiate between the 2 opinions, you know, do it. I mean, it's worth the time to go through that.
When I first, and a few other times after that, thankfully a long time ago, got some accounts suspended of mine.
Right.
I immediately, you know, get emotionally charged, and I made at least half a dozen, in hindsight, horrible quick decisions afterwards. What are some of the decisions that you see sellers making right now in this crazy time? I imagine even more emotionally charged with the state of the economy.
I
that
mean,
they should not be doing?
especially the anxiety and the fear that you're talking about. Maybe you're not in the right frame of mind to write it yourself. You don't have, you said half a dozen. There's no way that people like back, you're talking about a few years ago when you did it. There's no way that half a dozen appeals will get read in this day and age. I mean, I recommend that people, if you want to try it once. Don't try it once, twice, three times, and then start looking for help. It might be too late at that point. Decide early on if you want to do it yourself or not. If you think you've got a good idea of what's expected, then I'm not going to dissuade you from doing it from the beginning. At least one attempt, with a strong POA could be accepted. So yeah, but don't wait until you're stuck in the mud and then start casting about for other solutions, because this is an emotional time. People are stressed. It's funny you mentioned, some people are distracted because their kids are around instead of being in school. You're distracted by the lack of revenue that you have right now because you're not getting as much sales. You're not shipping as much into FBA. So you're probably not at your peak performance level right now. I mean, somebody like me, between the 6 years I did it for Amazon and the 6 years I've been doing it since, it's over a decade of doing this all the time. So the emotional element doesn't really factor in for me, aside from the passion we have for helping people resolve these as quickly as possible. And when you're on an account health services call with us, you feel the passion too, because we're like, give us some useful information. Don't mislead us. Don't tell us you don't know how to guide us when we called you for this. Sometimes we just don't call account health services. We've got strong ideas on what needs to go into a POA. So I would just counsel people against waiting until you do 3 or 4 of these before you get help.
And do you think it's important to act on this immediately after it happens, or to maybe let a little bit of this stuff calm down? How long do you have to act?
Most people we work with, we start working on it immediately because it's a situation where you don't want to wait. If you're not in a good mental space to write a POA, then wait until you are. But because of the delays and the backlogs we're seeing with seller performance, you don't want to wait too long. You want a good plan. You don't want to be hasty and sloppy about it, but they could take several days to get back to you. You might have to send what they call a nudge request, which is, hey, we're still out here. We sent an appeal. We got our plan of action in. We haven't heard anything. That's something you should do within 2-3 days anyway, even without coronavirus. Nowadays, could take them 4, 5, 6 days. I mean, a lot of businesses can't survive waiting a week only to find out you've been denied and you're not getting reinstated. So the sooner the better, as long as you know you can do something competently in a detailed, organized fashion.
How quickly have you been able to successfully get someone maybe from suspension to, and obviously this doesn't apply to every case.
Right.
They're suspended, they acted fast, they got a hold of you, and how quick were they back up?
Yeah, no. So this is what like you said, I jumped ahead a little bit with the so-called secondary review. Some of the people we worked with initially did not get reinstated right away. They got this is what was interesting. They got the reinstatement message very early, like within 24 hours, but they still had to pass through a secondary review to get all their listings back. And that was because it's a sensitive topic. They want to make sure that a manager gets their eyes on some of these and approves certain cases for reinstatement. So a couple of them took a couple extra days, but within 2, 3, 4 days, they were back up.
Okay. And you think it's important to have maybe the invoices that you purchased the goods for initially to show what you bought it for and what it sold for in the case of gouging?
Yep.
So definitely having good
That's
record.
always good. Demonstration that local laws, state and local laws on price gouging. If you didn't know them before, you know them now. You show links to those pages. It looks like you've actually researched it. When it comes to the repricer issue and automation, you're proving that you have somebody in place who's in charge of compliance or who understands that they have to monitor that. So
definitely. And I'm going to make sure we link to that, to the article you just published in the show notes of this podcast. Chris, is there anything that I'm not asking that I should be asking surrounding gouging? Because I'm not going to claim to be I've not had to deal with it. I've never been on either side of gouging. So is there something important that you think the listener should know?
I mean, and if it's, if you're taking it from the legal perspective, understand what competent legal advice looks like and talk to people who understand these laws, who have a background in this area of law, I would say as well. You can look on a state website and understand what gouging is going to mean in your particular state. But don't dwell on the legality piece so much. It can be a lot about how your operations function and how you'll improve them to make sure that prices will not rise as demand goes up and supply goes low. I mean, that's mostly what this is about. A lot of price gouging laws originate from 1970s, right? Gasoline shortages. Mm-hmm. So you can write a short introduction and a plan of action that takes the bird's eye view. We understand that overpricing during shortages is the wrong thing to do. It's, it breaks policy and breaks local laws. We've amended our practices. We've improved our operations to the point where we can guarantee that this will not happen again the next time there's a crisis. Amazon's not just worried about coronavirus. They're worried that you're willing to observe and adapt to policies, policy changes as they occur, and also the situation in terms of what you're selling to what buyers in particular regions of the marketplace, and then times of crisis, how you respond, how you react during times of crisis that produce shortages. Because you have to be, Amazon isn't the wind it up and let it go marketplace. You have to be kind of 24/7 global thinking when it comes to this stuff. You have to be aware of your surroundings. Otherwise, they think they can't trust you with their buyers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's their ultimate goal, right? Can we trust you? We'll reinstate you and we'll accept your plan of action, your appeal, only if we can trust you with our buyers. You have to show them that ability to trust.
That makes a ton of sense. Chris, I'm going to be releasing this video in the social media group immediately, well, this evening, right after we record this, and the listeners here will also be able to listen to this on the podcast very soon. Chris, how can somebody get a hold of you that could potentially be watching this tonight and is having issues with gouging and they need your help?
Yeah. So obviously this is time sensitive, urgent stuff. I've got a lot of resources and material about this. I've already done 2 articles on it since coronavirus hit, but I have a contact form on my website, ecommercechris.com, and also email me directly, Chris, CHRIS @ecommercechris.com. We've got a lot of emails coming in, obviously, but we're going through them and getting back to people pretty quickly. So
absolutely. And I believe you have a social media group as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. The Facebook group is Amazon Seller First Class. And I've been posting a lot of information there as well, sharing some seller stories on this topic. We're going to have things not related to price gouging that are related to the coronavirus impact as well. And we've been talking to a lot of different experts. It's not all material just for me. I've been talking to a lot of experts in the Amazon space about what Amazon can be doing to help sellers during this difficult time as well. So
absolutely. I think you're in the Wizards of Amazon Facebook group. I'm going to tag you when I put that video up. If anyone has any questions, they can reach out to you there. Chris, thank you so much for your time in this crazy time. And I look forward to having you on the show again soon.
Thanks so much. Stay safe, everybody.
Liked what you heard and want to stay connected? Join our Facebook group or find me anywhere on social media @Wizards of Amazon or text the word Amazon to 69922.